And what I'm going to do over the next couple of minutes is go through 5 different things that for me, I believe have helped me now at 35 years old pick up fewer injuries and niggles than I did when I was about flipping 21. But active range of motion is a very different thing and works on what's called the elasticity of the tissues. As if you like step off a baby's head on Dartmoor and you roll your ankle, that kind of thing. You need to ensure you are doing some kind of strength training. I think the downside of including this kind of stuff in your training is if you overdo it, basically. And also pursuing an improvement in strength. So you want to be a good, all-round, robust, resilient, 3-dimensional athlete. It's not like you're going to go out on day one and you're just going to fucking die on the side of the hill. What is going on, team? Welcome back to another video. Now, one of the things that I've been thinking a hell of a lot about recently is how unbelievably flipping frustrating it can be to graft hard to get to the start line of something crucially important for you and a potential dream. But from that start line position, feel as though you can't properly execute, properly apply all your effort because you're injured or you've got a few niggles or something's just not quite right. I want to say at this stage that this video is absolutely appropriate and for you if you are about to join Royal Marine Commando training, about to move forward into any military training globally, or if you are just a hybrid athlete who does a combination of strength work and conditioning work. If that speaks to you and you fit into one of those buckets, then there are a couple of things that I'm going to be walking you through over the next kind of 5 to 15 minutes. I don't know how much longer this video is going to last, but you already do. If you're one of those people and you fit into one of those kind of character buckets, and that is something that you are working towards, either a big hybrid event or starting military training, then what I'm going to do over the next couple of minutes is go through 5 different things that for me, I believe have helped me now at 35 years old feel more mobile, more supple, and generally pick up fewer injuries and niggles than I did when I was about flipping 21. Jumping into the first one then, range of motion, or R.O.M, which is a term that a lot of you guys probably would have heard if you've been doing any kind of CrossFit or functional fitness on the lead up to either in your entry and pathway into hybrid training or as part of a prep for CTC or for any part of the military. But there's something a little bit different in regards to the execution of this stuff, which is what I want to cover with you now. You have something called static or passive range of motion, depending on the particular vernacular that you use. As an example, a lot of CrossFit or functional fitness classes, or R.O.M WOD as an example, will get you holding like a kettlebell in front of you, kind of goblet squat style, dropping down, and then holding that squat position to stretch out the muscle tissues, to really lengthen the connective tissues like the tendons and ligaments as well, to give everything a little bit more range permanently. And this stuff absolutely is relevant, but one of the things that I think is absolutely crucial, which is why I'm starting this video off with this first principle, is working on something called active range of motion. Very few sports or events or endeavors actually require you to hold a certain position. The holding positions at the end range are very good for developing mobility and range of motion around a joint. We want that. But active range of motion is a very different thing and works on what's called the elasticity of the tissues. Now, basically, I'm not going to be going over with you today things that are going to improve your performance directly. I'm going to be going over things that luckily only take a couple of minutes a day, but hopefully will prevent you from getting injured. So the kind of things that are going to get you injured in a long hybrid event or in military training is if you like step off a baby's head on Dartmoor and you roll your ankle, that kind of thing. And that is obviously, that means everything is stretched. Or if your foot slips on something and kind of goes out to the side, that could potentially strain or even tear your adductor. If you're working on active range of motion around the hips especially, it might just make the difference between, oh, my foot went from under me and I've snapped my ankle, I'm straight in the rehab unit, I'm in Hunter, I'm fucked. Or my foot went from under me, oh, that feels a little bit weird, get up, brush yourself off and keep going. The thing about these like prehab movements are, hopefully, you will never know whether or not they worked, but if you never really know, then they probably did work because you didn't get injured. So active range of motion around the hips with lateral leg swings and then forward and back leg swings. These are 2 things that I just think are absolutely flipping crucial, as basically pretty much every movement is going to require some level of articulation around the hip joint. And if you can get your active range of motion safer and develop a little bit of elasticity there, you're going to be golden. Again, it's just doing everything you can to stack the deck in your favor of staying healthy long term, whether this is a military pursuit or whether or not you're just a general all-round athlete and you're doing an increasing amount of stuff out in the hills, out on the trails in a 3-dimensional environment. Active range of motion for the hips, literally some lateral leg swings, say 10 each side, front and back leg swings, 10 each side again, less than 60 seconds, guys. If you do that at the beginning of every single session as part, like bolted into your warm-up, it is a negligible amount of extra time, but it's just one of those things that is going to make sure that you're probably a little bit more robust than you would be if you didn't do it. The second one is based around another body part that is used basically in every single movement, ground contact wise, and that is your Achilles and your ankles. So as an ultimate three-dimensional, robust, resilient athlete, we're gonna be running a lot, we're gonna be yomping or rucking or tabbing or whatever the hell you wanna call it a lot. And all of these things require a huge amount of load and a huge amount of volume going through each of your Achilles tendons, literally every single step. There are lots of different things you can do to keep your ankles healthy, but basically I want you to remember this. Keeping your ankles healthy requires you to keep your Achilles tendon healthy. This is the second phrase I want you to remember. Tendons love load, but they hate spikes in load. That is a fancy scientific term to say you're running from tendons being completely relaxed to completely contracted. They've got enough of that instant transition by the fact that we walk on our feet everywhere. But giving them some load without a spike in load basically means perform some either incredibly slow calf raises. I actually don't really know if I think you should do this standing or whether or not you should do this on a leg press. But on a leg press, genuinely, like half your body weight is enough to do 10 incredibly slow reps on each side. So this second tip of the day, tip 2 of 5, which is around Achilles health, is kind of split into 2. Number 1, 10 reps each side, like 3-4 seconds up, 3-4 seconds down per leg, so single leg kind of calf raises on a leg press. That is a hell of a lot of time and attention, guys. Between 6 and 8 seconds per rep, and you're doing 10 of them. That's anywhere between a minute and a minute and a half per leg. That's gonna be lasting a while. The second part of this Achilles health tip is to do some loaded isometrics. Definitely on a leg press, I'm a big fan of this. It's just easier to change the weight rather than giving someone a fucking piggyback and then jumping on the edge of a step. Either single leg or double leg. I recommend single leg if you can do it, and just holding it in a neutral position for about 30 seconds, where it's like you're really having to work to just hold it in position. And what this does is tendons generally have very low blood flow, and this weighted, this loaded isometric for your Achilles just gets a hell of a lot of blood pumping. Hope that makes sense so far, guys. So that's tip 1 and tip 2 done. Moving on to tip 3, this is a bit more of a generalized program, but luckily the British military and militaries worldwide are starting to catch up on this. So the third tip is you need to ensure you are doing some kind of strength training through the week on the run up. You do not get access to the gym when you are at CTC. I don't know if you get access to a gym if you're at Catterick, if you're training for the army or wherever, or any other military organization globally, but that doesn't matter. Good quality strength training where you're making your tissues stronger, where you're gonna be more robust, you're staying supple at the time because we're doing our mobility stuff as we spoke about earlier, but 2 to 3 times a week of having exposure where we're doing full multi-joint exercises, some kind of squat variation. I'm a big fan of box squats because I just think they're safer for most people, but that's because I'm controversial and I'm built in a way that squats don't really work for me. But squats, lunges, deadlifts, bench press, overhead press, some weighted pull-ups will absolutely help your normal pull-ups. But just having the stress go through the system means that our body overcompensates to this stress, it overcompensates to this load, and then we become stronger. I've done a few videos already on how strength training programs can look for people prepping for the military, and how to balance running and lifting if you are prepping for the forces or if you're a hybrid athlete. Again, I use these terms kind of interchangeably. If you are an aspiring hybrid athlete, that basically just means you are pursuing development in endurance in some way, normally with a specific focus, and also pursuing an improvement in strength. So you want to be a good, all-round, robust, resilient, three-dimensional athlete. So for anyone who's wondering whether or not this is right for you, if you are joining the military or if you aren't joining the military, luckily the training on the run-up should be pretty much the same. So I'm not going to go into too much detail on that now in terms of what that should look like. But what I will do is I'll put the links to the full videos down in the description below. So if you do want to have a little bit more of a deep dive on what a strength training program should look like, how to balance running and weightlifting if you're prepping for the military, and if you're a hybrid athlete, how to balance everything as well, then the links to those videos are all down in the description below now. Tip number 4, this is absolutely crucial, and a surprising number of people don't do this, especially if they're joining the military or if you're prepping to, well, not even necessarily if you're prepping for anything, but if you want to be fairly good and competent at running in a three-dimensional environment, up hills, down hills, over felt, somewhere on the trail, somewhere that's basically off of a completely fucking flat road, then you need to start getting exposure to that. I'm not saying you need to beast yourself on it. I'm not saying it's the only place you need to run, but being able to run in a three-dimensional environment off-road is my 4th tip for today. Even if it's just once a week, the mechanics of running in an environment like that are going to be a little bit different. They're going to be a lot different actually to running on the road. The stress through each joint is going to be a little bit different. You're probably going to step on a stone and your foot's going to go from under you a little bit, and then you're naturally going to catch. And all of these little proprioceptive tools and proprioceptive skills are going to develop when you're in that environment. The last thing that you want to do is only train on the road. You get to week 1, week 2 of training, you're not used to the hills. That's the time that you're going to pick up an injury, because the volume is going to be high, you're going to be nervous, you're going to be a little bit sleep deprived already, you're going to be tense from the fact that you're there, and you're going to be in an environment that you've never been in before. So again, I'm not saying you need to do flipping half marathons 3 times a week, running across ridges in the Himalayas, but even if you go into a wood block and it's fairly flat, but you're slaloming in and out of trees, that's the kind of thing that's going to get you used to working and moving and being able to survive and thrive in a 3-dimensional environment. One of the other things that can be really good for that is just some lateral movement. Even some side steps in your warm-ups will mean you are not only competent at moving in a straight line. Turning and rotating is obviously relevant, but lateral movement works parts of your hip and parts of your kind of muscular system that are basically going to be switched off if you are only ever running on an athletics track or up the fucking M1. And number 5, my 5th and final tip for the day, even if you are not prepping for the military, but you are an aspiring hybrid athlete and you want to be a good 3-dimensional athlete, I'm a big fan of getting used to moving with a little bit of weight on your back. A lot of guys that prep people for the military say this might not necessarily be a great idea. I am not saying that you should get used to running on the hills with weight on your back for long distances, but even walking with about 10 kilos on your back, the mechanics of your body change. When you've got a little bit of weight pulling you backwards, you lean forward, the torso shape changes, your breathing, because obviously you breathe into your torso, your breathing rhythm and the mechanics and the total amount of air that you're bringing in changes as well. So even if it is only 10 kilos, maybe go on a couple of 5K walks. Again, in a 3-dimensional environment, that will help. If you want to get a little bit of a jog on, you can. Again, there are other military training providers, and at the moment, I'm not really going into that space because that is not something I want to kind of double down on, although I do train people for the military, and I have done for about 7 or 8 years. I think the downside of including this kind of stuff in your training is if you overdo it, basically. Is if you put weight on your back and you're running with it for a good amount of distance 3 to 5 times a week. That's just going to bug you up because it's a total amount of volume of stress and load through your system that you don't need. But getting used to walking with weight isn't, even if it's just a quick walk, it's still going to be a cardio tool, trust me. You're going to be flipping gassed and you're going to be getting a sweat on, and the muscles in your legs and your hips and your connective tissues and everything's going to be getting stronger. I think that walking with it, even if it's just once a week, is going to be beneficial and is going to help your preparation. I did it. I know that a lot of military training providers don't advocate doing a hell of a lot of this, but at the end of the day, I don't know anyone that joined the Marines when I did and actually passed out as a Royal Marine that had literally never put a bag on their back before they flipping went to Lympstone. It's just not the case. So once a week, between 5 and 10K, even if it's just walking and you don't run at all, just keep a sharp pace walking and that will be beneficial. You don't need to go heavier than 10 kilograms. You don't even need to be walking more than 7 or 8 kilometers. But if I were you, I'd be very dubious of anyone who says that just stay completely away from it, because putting a bag on your back and going for a walk in the hills is no different from a flipping hike, which civvies do for days, and the whole thing is that we should be a little bit better than them. It's just the hyper volume of that style that's going to ruin you. It's not that you're going to go out on day one and you're just going to fucking die on the side of the hill. So there we go. Haven't really taken a breath in that amount of time, but 5 tips there, guys. I hope you did enjoy this. Any questions on anything at all, just put it down in the comment section below. Genuinely, I've said this before and I say it again now, I have a time in my week where I go through my YouTube channel comments and I respond to literally everyone. So if you've got any questions or comebacks or anything on this, or you want a little bit more detail on some of it, then please do just let me know, put it down in the comment section below and you will get a response very soon. So as a summary, we have work on your range of motion, both static and also active. Make sure you're including the active range of motion stuff in there. That's the first tip. The second tip is work on your ankle health, specifically your Achilles health with some single leg, slow calf raises on a leg press. Doesn't have to be heavy, it just gets that range of motion moving, similar to kind of tip 1, but a little bit of weight going through the system, and then also doing those loaded isometrics as well. Number 3 is make sure you have a strength program in place to accompany any endurance development. At the end of the day, lifting weights doesn't make you unfunctional. That is an unbelievably flipping old school way of looking at things. You should absolutely pursue a development in strength as much as you can before you start military training. It doesn't make you slow, it doesn't make you heavy, it doesn't make you unfunctional. It makes you quicker, it makes you safer, and it makes you more robust. Again, for more information on that, click on one of the links in the description below to some of my previous videos on exactly this topic. Number 4 is run in a 3-dimensional environment. Don't stay just flat, don't stay just in a straight line. Do some lateral side steps as part of your warm-up. Get used to turning, get used to moving through some trees. Again, this doesn't need to be a huge inclusion in your training, but once a week is definitely gonna help you. And number 5, get used to moving around with some weight in your back. I say moving around, not sprinting. 5K plus with a 10 kilo rucksack is something that fat accountants do on a bloody weekend. You are not going to die on the side of the mountain because you do it once, and it's not going to be overtraining if you just include walking with a weighted rucksack once a week. Any comments, do put it down in the comment section below. If you have not yet done so, please do subscribe. This channel is not a military preparation channel, but it is a channel for everything performance, health and physique, for people who want to develop an all-round robustness and fitness. And even though some of my videos are for power athletes, some of my videos are for hybrid athletes, some of my videos are for military, if you are any one of those categories, please do subscribe, because regardless of the thumbnail and the title and the fact I'm casting out a slightly wider net, I genuinely believe that most of my content is going to be beneficial for everyone if you are attempting to become both fitter and stronger and more athletic and injured a hell of a lot less. Please do smash that like button as well. It only takes you 2 seconds, but it's incredibly beneficial for me and the channel. But the biggest, most shameless favor I can ask you is, if you have got some level of value from this, please do share this video with someone just like you that you believe will get as much value as you have. Have an awesome day, guys, and as always, stay strong, stay healthy, stay awesome, stay injury free, and I'll see you in the next video.